Hi, welcome. This is a daily astrology chat for January 20th, 2025. I'm Gina. I love to come on here every day to talk about the current astrology in general, and answer any questions you might have. Today, I just kind of wanted to take a big picture look all around the current chart for right now. We spend so much time looking at individual aspects, really focusing in on maybe Mars in Cancer, talking about Pluto newly in Aquarius, the Sun about to meet up with Pluto tomorrow for an exact conjunction, the first one in Aquarius. We talk about the nodes shifting signs. But I think part of the benefit of daily astrology is just taking a step back and taking a big picture look at the chart for right now. So I'm just going to go around the chart and talk about what's going on. I think often when we do daily astrology or daily horoscopes or something like that, there's a lot of focus on the moon, because the moon says a lot about how we feel. It says a lot about what we want and just sort of our mood that day. Moon, mood, those words are connected actually. And uh, that's great. But all of these other notes are present too. Like, for example, Pluto in Aquarius, every single horoscope each day isn't going to talk about Pluto in Aquarius because it's going to be there for 19 years. So we can't review it every day. The moon is what moves around the chart nice and fast. But all of these planets are active right now. The way I like to think about it is almost like a piece of music being played. Um, and each planet is a different note. And so the moon is a note that moves and changes really quickly. The outer planets, because they're so slow, their tone, their note that they're contributing to the piece of music that is sort of the feeling around us, that note is very sustained. They're playing that same note for for years and years, but that doesn't mean that we don't feel it and that we don't hear it. So talking about the whole chart, talking about all the planets that are active right now, explaining all those different notes is really a great way to get a sense for the current astrology. So let's take it one at a time and sort of, yeah, get a sense for the feeling of right now. I am going to highlight the thing that we're talking about as we go and just kind of move that around the chart. Excuse me for a minute. Small cough, excuse me, excuse me. Hopefully this isn't too distracting. My hope is that this is helpful, not harmful, in terms of our clarity. Rather than going outer planets in, let's go inner planets out in terms of our explanation. Because, like I said, we really do feel each and every one of these planets. They're all playing a note, and let's just sort of go through them. Let's go through all these different aspects. So the first thing I want to talk about is just this moon in Libra. The moon is in Libra today. And the moon does say a lot about how we feel sort of day to day, but it's a very changing, moving aspect, right? It's not something that's with us for long. It's not deep or heavy at all. It's a very surface sort of layer of our mood today. And so the moon is moving through the sign of Libra all day, and that brings a focus and emphasis on relationships, a desire for harmony and balance, and for things to feel calm and easy. We're not feeling super confrontational today, as a general rule. We would rather leave things be, have a peaceful, pleasant experience. We want relationships to feel calm and easy today. And so there's that note. I think that's very important. And the moon is making a lot of aspects to other planets, but the moon moves so quickly that it's really not worth talking about those. They come in and out. Next, let's go over to the sun. The sun is newly in Aquarius, and this feels a little bit different than it does most years because Pluto is right here as well. I want to kind of shift it so you can see the Aquarius too. In my little visual, I hope that this visual is helpful, not harmful. Um, I hope it helps us to stay focused. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you think the the visual is helpful or if it would be better for me to just talk and move a little faster through things. Um, okay, so the sun in Aquarius, we have that Libra note of that harmony, that desire for harmony in relationships. Now we have the sun in Aquarius bringing in a little bit of a feeling of different, a little bit of a feeling of feeling different and apart and separate. There's sort of a distance to Aquarius. Aquarius energy, we sort of love humanity in general, but not necessarily always individuals on an individual basis. It's more theoretical for Aquarius, you know? Um, there's sort of that odd level of attachment with Aquarian energy. It can feel like um, it reminds me of the time of year that we're in right now and the weather. So it's very, very cold. We're very much in the dead of winter, but the days are also getting longer. It's not like January when we're really, really in the thick of it. There's sort of that interesting contrast between the sun coming back a little bit and things getting a little brighter, but also it's still the dead of winter. And there's always something about that energy that kind of reminds me of Aquarius. Aquarius energy is incredibly forward thinking. We are thinking about the future. We're feeling calm in relationships and wanting relational harmony. We're thinking, Aquarius, about the future and what's ahead. Often, Aquarian energy is talking about what everyone will be talking about 5 years from now. It's sort of moving forward and thinking about the future. Pluto is coming into a conjunction with Aquarius. So the Aquarius part of your chart, if you know where that is, might feel really different than it ever has before. Let's put it this way, in terms of the feel of the day of this chart overall, there's some aspect of it that is brand new. There's some aspect of the feeling of right now, of what's happening right now, that never happened before. We definitely feel like we're in a new era. We feel like we're different than we used to be, and we're thinking about the future. Okay, so we have those two energies, we're putting them all together. And I will talk more about the sun conjunct Pluto, but today we're just doing a big overview. Where am I going next? All right, let's go to Mercury in Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn, which is forming something of a square here to Chiron. So maybe we'll talk about those and go there next. Okay, Mercury in Capricorn, practical, hardworking, setting goals, figuring out what's next. There's an element of planning and of seriousness to the air right now. But there's also something sort of in this that's a little bit healing. I want to talk about this Chiron in connection with this aspect really quickly. And that Mercury, that's interesting, but it's not as significant as some other things in the chart, so it's okay to move past it a little bit quickly. It's sort of what's happening for us almost on like the mental, intellectual level. And it's a little bit serious, it's a little bit planning. Chiron here in Aries is really interesting because it's at the 19-degree point. This 19 degrees of Aries is exactly where we had the eclipse in April. So if you think back to what was going on for you in late March, early April to mid-April, there may be some themes around that time that are sort of being healed right now. Something might have come to the surface, and now Chiron's coming around and sort of gleaning the healing and the lessons from that experience. So let's say maybe you were in a place of conflict with somebody at that time. You may be finding that now there's an easing of that. You guys have moved on. You found a new way to do things. You may have had some sort of challenge arise at work, and now you're at the point where that's being settled and that's being um, put to rest, and you're not worrying about it anymore. And it could be something much older than that, much deeper than that. Chiron, Chiron brings us the wisdom of the lessons that we've had to personally learn. You know how um, you're sort of the best at helping other people with things that you've needed help with. If there's something that you struggled with and you ended up learning and growing and figuring that problem out, you're like the best person to talk to others about that. And that's sort of Chiron, that wounded healer, him, the places where we're hurt, where we have had a hard time, being the places where we actually have the most to offer others. So there's some theme in that happening right now in the chart. Some movement towards healing, towards using um, the parts of us that have struggled and suffered to help, to heal, to help others. And that does resonate very nicely with that moon. And because of the placement there, it might be interesting to think back to those eclipses and just what was going on for you in the spring. Obviously, if you have planets and points right there, it would be even that much more significant. And I think that the square from Mercury is kind of interesting. It's sort of being nudged by that hardworking, serious Capricorn energy. Somehow that serious Capricorn energy is sort of helping to bring it in a little bit. Okay, I want to look at something a little bit different here. Sorry to be bouncing around with the chart. Let's just move this actually like out of the way for a minute. Let's pull this up here. And I want to talk about two different planets. I want to talk about Mars and I want to talk about Venus. Okay, and first I'm going to talk about them in isolation and then we will look at aspects that they're making. I think it's so interesting that we have, I don't like this. Sorry. I think it's so interesting that we have Venus exalted in Pisces. It's the absolute best place for Venus. It's a beautiful place for Venus. Venus exalted is wonderful. And I'll explain it. And then at the same time, we have Mars retrograde in Capricorn. These are such interesting energies to put together at the same time. So Mars retrograde in Capricorn is really bringing, again, this is why I thought of it, just talking about Chiron, emotions to the surface. Sort of long, not buried emotions, but it might be that emotions are coming to the surface that you're not usually in touch with. Things that are usually sort of a little bit below the surface and below your level of consciousness or perception, right? They're sort of operating below the surface, are coming to the surface to be looked at and understood during this time. Our emotions are sort of a little bit raw. And it could be about very old stuff. It could be about home, about family of origin, about parents. We really have an opportunity to work with some of those heavier, older, emotional themes with Mars retrograde in Cancer. It's not an easy aspect. We might not feel as motivated or as confident right now as we usually do. For example, that Mars energy moving inward instead of outward can be a little bit uncomfortable, and it's not like the most vital energy, really. It's more contemplative. And there's a lot that can be gained from that, but yeah, it is sort of more contemplative than active. So that motivation, that confidence, that drive might not be there like it usually is. People can act out and be a little bit reactive with an energy like that. Although today, I think with this Libra moon, that's a little bit mitigated just for today. And then Venus in Pisces. Venus exalted in Pisces. Beautiful. Best place for Venus. So this is related to our relationships, it's related to love, to romance, to that aspect of life, to beauty. Finances are also connected to Venus, and Venus is exalted right now. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so that means all of those qualities are exalted. So it's not just love, it's unconditional love. It's not just compassion, it's empathy, right? It's not just art, it's our most beautiful creation. So I think it's very interesting to have these two planets that sort of ping off of each other and relate to one another, going through these very different signatures right now. And I wanted to mention that as we take our tour around the chart here. Let's see where to go next. I think what makes sense to talk about is some of this Pisces activity and how it's connecting to some other things. So let's focus in on that for a second. As you can see, we have a lot of planets here in Pisces. I'm not crazy about that. We have a lot going on here in Pisces. Let's start just by talking about Venus and Saturn, which are coming together at this time for this Venus-Saturn conjunction. There's something about this that's providing some structure for relationships, that's providing some order and organization, some limits. We know our own limits, our own boundaries and relationships, and we're becoming aware of the limits of others. And that helps us to connect with some positive structure within relationships, with the boundaries that we need to move it forward. Again, with Venus conjunct Saturn, especially in Pisces, such an amazing time to create art, because Venus is all about art and creativity, and then Saturn sort of makes things real, is very practical and constructive, like on the ground. So those two signatures together, really, it's like the piece of paper for the poetry, it's the canvas for the painting, right? It sort of puts all of those different energies together at the same time. And it could also just be cooking a meal or cleaning your house or choosing a new hairstyle. Like all of those things are creative. Driving home a different way is creative. At the same time, we have Neptune here in Pisces as well, and the North Node. We have to talk about that. Neptune is like our dreams, our fantasies. And the North Node is sort of brings us what is really meant to be ours. So there's an element right now of sort of the potential for our dreams to come true. That's the highest potential of Neptune conjunct the North Node. Day to day, Neptune and Pisces can feel confusing. It can feel blurry. We cannot be quite so sure what it is we're doing. But there's an element to this, to these points at the late degrees of Pisces, that is nothing short of the potential for being able to manifest what we envision into reality. So while right now might feel like a bit of a blurry time, it's a great time to dream and to think about the future. Okay, we're getting there. I think we're almost there. We've talked about almost all of the planets. I have just a couple more to do that I think are very important. Let's talk about Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is bringing us new ideas, new insights, new learning, new interests. You may find that you're curious about things in a different way than you have been in the past. But Jupiter in Gemini is also helping us identify sort of intellectually what we don't want. And that's because Jupiter doesn't really love to be in Gemini, would much rather be across the way in Sagittarius. And so because of that setup, there's sort of like a no energy to it. So even though it's Jupiter and it's expansive, it's expanding into, yep, I don't want to go this way. I don't want to go that way. So what are you learning right now about what you don't like and about what you don't want? And about what you don't believe, what you don't think? That's very Jupiter in Gemini vibes. Okay, Uranus in Taurus. Wherever we have Taurus in the chart, we all have parts of our lives that we really, really like to be stable. We have aspects of our world that we do not like to change. So much so that wherever we have Taurus, sometimes it can be true that even if the change is for the good, people don't want to do it because we're so dug in with Taurus. Taurus can really resist change and enjoy that consistency, um, and that fixed energy, I guess. So, um, with Uranus there, we've been getting shakeups to that part of our life, and this has been true for a few years. And so we also had a really powerful conjunction here with Jupiter this year. There are some parts of our lives that have felt very stable that are changing and that have been changing. And we're riding through the waves of that. And it's not, that doesn't feel easy, but don't be afraid of change. I think it's a good reminder not to fear change just for change's sake, to understand that new things coming in is a good thing and a welcome thing. So, you know, this is just a big sort of picture overview. We have that relationship energy, harmonious desire for harmony and peace and flowing easy relationships. We have newness coming in from the sun and Pluto and Aquarius. Future, we're thinking about the future. We also have sort of a serious planning energy with Mercury and Capricorn. Our relationship energy is sort of on fire with Venus in Pisces. There's the potential for building and constructing some really high relationships, some really high creations. Our emotions are really rising to the surface with this Mars in Cancer to be healed and worked with. We're learning more about what we don't want. We are healing potentially quite old wounds. Might want to think back to April and see if there's any overlap there, and just continuing to work with Uranus and Taurus that is sometimes shaking up things that we didn't necessarily want to be shaken up, but we trust that it's for the good. So it's almost not accurate when you talk so big picture about these kinds of things. You can almost lose some of the accuracy because I'm saying so little. It's important to look in more depth at these signatures in order to really understand them properly. But every once in a while, I think it's nice to just take a step back and go through the whole chart and talk about what's going on in that big picture way. So that's what I thought I would do today. Thank you so much for being here. I will link to some videos here at the end that are relevant to the current astrology, and I'll be back again tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful day.